Hello, my name is Susie Hess. I am the co-founder of the Trauma Informed Task Force of Los Angeles. So for the next few minutes, I'm going to talk about the history of the task force. Throughout this presentation, you'll see beautiful art by local artist Jose Ramirez from Los Angeles. And if you love his art as much as we do, you can check out his art at ramirezart.com. So the agenda for the next few minutes is I'll talk about the historical context, the strategic planning committee, the communications subcommittee, and the community engagement subcommittee. I'm first going to start by talking about the Trauma Informed Task Force of Los Angeles, of how we started, when we started, and why we started. So it all started on a rainy day in Los Angeles, November 2014. And as many of you know, when it rains in LA, many of us do not leave our homes. We do not drive. So it was pretty amazing of how many folks showed up that day. And the people who were invited basically were folks that I was having coffees with for years. I was in the domestic violence field or the intimate partner violence field for about 20 years. And during that time, I was meeting with folks for coffee to talk about, our concerns about, ensuring that participants were not being re-traumatized when entering agencies and systems. And then those coffees expanded to people in various communities and fields who were seeing something similar in different systems. So we all were really wanting to see what we can do so that we could prevent any type of re-trauma when participants would enter systems. So that was who showed up on the rainy day in LA. And basically about 10 folks showed up on that day. And those 10 people, we would become the initial group that would begin trying to move things forward. The following month, December 2014, we held a retreat, and we held it in a Purple House in Los Angeles, and so we called it the Purple House Retreat. And the intention was to develop relationships with each other. I knew each person, however, they didn't know each other, and we thought it was really important to be able to develop trust and identify our personal goals of why we were there. And as Gabor Mate has said, relationships mitigate resistance. We held our first community roundtable July 2015 in Council Member Bonin's office. We had about 100 to 120 folks that attended, and there was a lot of excitement, a lot of passion to join this momentum. The guest speaker, if you can see at the very front of the room, was Norma Kumpian, who was on our speakers bureau, which I'll talk about soon. And she is a life coach at the Anti-Recidivism Coalition and is also featured in the documentary Sin by Silence. And she had talked about traumatized systems and what needs to be done in order for individuals, families, youth, and communities to heal. We then held, October 2015, the 10 of us held a retreat. It was a year later after our initial retreat, and we really wanted to identify a strategic plan and short-term and long-term goals. So that was the development of the Strategic Planning Committee. So that is what we called us, the 10 of us. And we also identified the mission statement, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. We then held the second community roundtable, which was in East LA, hosted by Hillsides, November of 2015. And as you could see, we started off with a drumming circle, and folks who attended were from many different communities. And that was the roundtable that we defined what is community trauma, and we defined what is community healing. In 2016 was the development of the Speakers Bureau. So in this image, you will see a panel that followed the screening of the documentary Paper Tigers. And 2 out of the 3 panelists are on our Speakers Bureau. So on the left is Kayron Valentine, In the middle is an attorney from public counsel, and to the right is Emily Cummins-Polk. Emily and Kayron are both on our speakers bureau, and they were on the panel talking about how to support vulnerable youth who've experienced trauma, specifically in education. We had partnered with USC Suzanne Dorick Peck School of Social Work, the NASW USC unit, and we helped them design a trauma-sensitive event, as well as Kayron and Emily being on their panel. And that was really the beginning of our Speakers Bureau, where we began to collaborate with other communities to design conferences or events that were trauma sensitive. We've done workshops and presentations and trainings. And it's a very diverse Speakers Bureau. We have folks from the reentry field, education, urban youth, intimate partner violence, the medical field, the legal field. So it really is a diverse Speakers Bureau. In 2017, we created an inclusive and collaborative pipeline of participation for the Trauma-Informed Task Force members to participate in leadership opportunities. And what we did was we held 2 leadership and engagement meetings in different parts of LA and invited folks to attend who wanted to get involved. And what we did was we basically talked about the history of the task force, what I'm doing right now, as well as identify entry points for leadership and engagement. The mission statement is to cultivate responsive and collaborative communities that foster healing and well-being. So the 3 key priorities that we've identified thus far in our strategic plan, I'm going to review briefly. They're in no particular order, and they're just the first 3 that we've identified. Priority 1 is providing education, training, and technical assistance to practically implement trauma-informed approaches. So that's really been our Speakers Bureau, as well as our communications subcommittee that I will also talk about. Priority 2 is actively engaging in initiatives that support regions, partnerships, common goals, and topics that build community resilience. So an example of that is we collaborated with Los Angeles County Trauma and Resiliency Informed Systems Change. And priority 3 is supporting community members with lived experience to lead the momentum, participate in shared decision-making, and influence local trauma-informed policy changes, which has really been the main goal of the task force, as well as the community engagement subcommittee. So now we'll talk about for a few minutes the Strategic Planning Committee, SPC, and the 2 subcommittees. The 2 subcommittees are the Community Engagement Subcommittee and the Communications Subcommittee. Both have co-leads and core members. The Strategic Planning Committee has co-chairs, communications coordinator, community engagement liaison, core SPC members, development coordinator, operations coordinator, training and resource liaison, who manages the Speakers Bureau, program and events coordinator, outreach and networking coordinator. The Communications Subcommittee develops a social media messaging campaign, edits the literature created for our newsletter, curates content and shares through various platforms, and develops a diverse trauma-informed task force Speakers Bureau along with the training and resource liaison. The Community Engagement Subcommittee engages the community in advocacy, develops relationships with key community partners and organizations, strategic outreach for programs, initiatives, and events, supports community initiatives, and informs the Communications Subcommittee. We have had advisors since the very beginning who have been incredibly helpful in providing support and guidance. And they have facilitated trauma-informed presentations. They have facilitated retreats using participatory decision-making, which is a collaborative model for making decisions, especially within large groups, providing guidance to co-chairs, and attending SPC meetings and providing support when needed. So I would like to end with a quote from Father Gregory Boyle. Here's what we seek: a compassion that can stand in awe at what the poor have to carry, rather than stand in judgment at how they carry it.